Today we'll begin discussing imagery from William Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. Within William Shakespeare's Hamlet lies a complex mesh of dark, ironic, contemplative, and violent motifs which join to create one of the most iconic tragedies ever produced. The subtle and perhaps not so subtle nuances within its pages detail the fall of Denmark and its royal court, which has fallen into disarray after the murder of its king, the previous Hamlet, by his own brother Claudius. The son of the now dead king, also named Hamlet, encounters a ghost who appears to be his late father, early in the play, who describes his murder and asks Hamlet to exact revenge on Claudius on his behalf. This chilling encounter sets every terrible act that is to follow in the play into motion, ending with every one of the main characters dead, including Hamlet himself, besides Horatio, the loyal friend of Hamlet, who lives on to tell the story he bore witness to. As the treachery, madness, and murder come to completion within the play, we find that there are common uses of imagery within the story that are important to understand the overall message the author intended for the readers to recognize. Today for this lesson, we will discuss imagery within Hamlet, what it means, and the three of the most important recurring subjects of imagery throughout the play and what they mean. To begin, imagery is defined as visually descriptive or figurative language, especially when used in literary work. Often, imagery is linked to ideas that in turn become symbolic, relating to symbolism that we will discuss in our next lesson. Imagery creates important image patterns throughout Hamlet. These patterns are created as the play continues and are what helps develop the structure of the work and form the main ideas within it. The three main imagery patterns that we will look at for this lesson are the pattern of disease, the pattern of deceit, and the pattern of discord. From the very beginning of the play, the pattern of disease imagery is apparent. In the beginning of the play, the guardsman Marcellus sets the tone for the story by stating, "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." The reason for the seemingly rotten and diseased tone of the play, apparent here even in its earliest stages, is that Denmark's court has been seemingly infected with various forms of sinfulness and destructive behavior. Starting off with the new king's treachery and his lust for the queen, his dead brother's wife, and the queen's own sexual disloyalty as she consorts with both her husband's brother and the lord chamberlain of Claudius's court, who is a pompous, conniving old man named Polonius, the father of Laertes and Ophelia. Images of ulcers, bodies full of pustules, and madness parallel the sins of drunkenness, espionage, war, adultery, and murder, to reinforce the central idea that Denmark is dying. To Hamlet, the very air he breathes is a foul, pestilent congregation of vapors. Furthermore, in Hamlet's eyes, the world and the people in it, especially women, have gone from seemingly healthy and pure to sick and corrupted. In his eyes, the world has fallen like a garden blasted with blight. This is reflected in the many uses of disease imagery, much of it dealing with examples of dying gardens, insects, and decaying bodies. Shakespeare pushes the disease imagery with the play further by detailing Hamlet himself as a victim of a deep melancholy that suggests he rots with a diseased will. Shakespeare shows this as time passes throughout the story, and Hamlet is still unable to take necessary action to revenge his father and save his country. Furthermore, as the other characters continue to evolve and further add to the corruptive decay throughout the play, we see Hamlet's building madness and inability to act, Laertes' thirst for quick satisfaction and revenge, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's consequential betrayal of their boyfriend. By the end of the play, the court is described as so diseased and rotten that all the deaths at the end seem to be a kind of release, such as when a sickness finally passes and life can begin anew. Now, let's look at some examples of where disease imagery is used, such as, "Such an act that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite, takes off the rose from the fair forehead of an innocent love, and sets a blister there." Or, "Lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring." Or when Laertes says, "The very sickness in my heart." Now we will begin discussing the instances where the patterns of deceit imagery are found within the play. The deceit and acts of pretense or lying that takes place during the play creates a web of misfortune that the characters cannot escape. A brief discussion of prostitution during Shakespeare's day will provide a link between the image patterns, disease, and deceit or lying, and perhaps showcase why Shakespeare decided to twine these two imagery patterns together. There were a lot of brothels or so-called stews in London during Shakespeare's day, but while they provided men pleasure, they were also breeding places of disease. A lot of prostitutes had sores on their bodies which they hid with makeup. Thus, prostitutes in the brothels they worked in are linked to the idea of disease, but also the idea of deception and fake appearance. This imagery here creates the undertones of distrust and feeling of foreshadowing felt by the reader throughout the play. An example of this is when Hamlet, after his father dies, even more so after he finds out about the murder, begins to see the world as a false, hypocritical place where people are duplicitous and hypocritical fakers. He even thinks this about Ophelia, even though she is in fact one of the more honest characters in the play. Throughout the rest of the play, Shakespeare has other characters also express an awareness of the world as a place where a lot of false acting goes on. All in all, the wealth of deceit imagery in the play ties to the idea, once again, that this court is corrupted and fallen, and that in such a place full of tragedy, It will never get better until something occurs that will wipe the slate clean. A clean slate does finally occur at the end of the play, as all the liars and sinners are killed, leaving only Horatio, an honest, true, and forthright man, to tell the tale. Now let's review some of the instances where deceit imagery is used. For example, the king tauntingly asks Laertes if the devotion to his father is true or merely the painting of a sorrow, a face without a heart. Or when Hamlet speaks of love in terms of a puppet show. Now let's look at the pattern of discord imagery used within Hamlet. Elizabethans tended to have a faith in the divine order of nature. Everything had its proper place and function under God. Everything was linked in an endless chain, and everything and every one had their place. When all was well, harmony reigned. However, when some unnatural act occurred, the idea was that it set off a chain reaction that threw everything into chaos until it was fixed. From this we can assume it is why Shakespeare, after the King of Denmark, Hamlet's father, is murdered, causes nature and the people of Denmark to go into a discordant frenzy. The pattern of discord imagery is perhaps one of the most prevalent themes of the play, therefore there is abundance of imagery alongside it. Examples of the discord within the play circle around the main event that sets every moment of chaos to follow it. Claudius's extremely unnatural act of killing the rightful king, who is also his brother, and then marrying his wife, called a kind of incest. It is a cursed act that throws everything into discord and is bound to set off a tragic chain reaction. Imagery of discord in the play supports this, including the many times we see madness from Hamlet, which was thought of as a kind of discord or unbalance of the mind. The acts of fighting, revenge, and general upset within the play surround the characters and their conversations with each other until it is apparent that through their speech that they are all heading towards disaster. Thank you. I hope this lesson was helpful to you, and please note my thanks to the different sources I used. Their information can be seen throughout the lesson.